Hey, what's going on, my beautiful viewers? I am back once again to do another Overlord Q&A. The last one I did about a month ago went over very well. I really loved the engagement. And I'll just be straight up, these videos are not only fun to make, but they're also not very hard for me to make. They're very casual for me, share some Overlord knowledge, and also discuss some things that I probably wouldn't discuss in like my breakdown videos or like other subject videos. So with that being said, if you've seen the other ones, you know the drill. I'm just gonna go through the comments section, just pick out any questions I think are really good and would make for fun topics of discussion. I've been averaging around like 7-ish questions a video, so it depends on how much I yap. So we'll see how much. I would like to keep that pace up at the very least. Oh, this one's good because this is actually related to a volume breakdown I did recently. Next Q&A question: what would happen if a group of undead were left alone for centuries? Could the death roll effect make an undead as strong as Ainz? When you say death roll effect, I believe that's a translation of what's in the official light novel. It's called the death spiral. That's what Khajiit refers to it as. This is basically an effect that Khajiit was trying to trigger in the Volume 2 content of Season 1. The description of it in the Overlord light novel is basically just having a bunch of undead around each other. Eventually the negative energy that they create kind of collects in pools, and that results in spawning more stronger undead. And I believe it's called a death spiral because it just keeps building and building on itself. So I'll just go ahead and say there is no like verbatim chart like this many years for this undead or this many years for this undead. It's more of a arbitrary thing. Maruyama did say that in the New World, Death Knights are naturally occurring undead that usually take around a century to spawn. So we know Death Knights are level 35. They're already considered extremely powerful and legendary creatures in the New World. So for it to evolve into something like an Overlord, which Overlords at minimum are level 80, I think it would take longer than centuries. I do know that in the Volume 11 content, Ainz asked Ainzak, the guild leader, about overlords. Ainzak didn't even know, had never heard of something called overlords, that type of undead. We do know that Sershana was an overlord, but we don't know if there are any naturally occurring overlords in the New World. At the very least, we know they're not common knowledge because Ainzak doesn't know about them. So in theory, I believe it's possible for a undead of someone around Ainz's level to spawn. It would just take an astronomically amount of time. So yeah, the in-universe rules do allow for that hypothetical situation though. Great question. Ooh, this is a really good question. So guys, before we continue on, a couple of things. Apparently the algorithm helps if I say this earlier in the video, but please, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me out and it'll let you know immediately when I post so you can get these videos earlier. Also, if you want to see another Q&A, you gotta like the video so I know. Also guys, another thing, due to multiple requests, I have turned on super thanks for this channel. This is not something I'm asking you to do. You do not have to donate to the channel. It's just been asked several times. People have asked me like, hey, are you gonna set up a Patreon or something? I turned on super thanks for anyone that wants to do something like that. If you don't have to, okay? I am not asking you to do that. Just letting you know that's available if you feel inclined to do so. All right, with that out of the way, let's continue on with the Q&A. So thinking outside of the box here, what does it say about Suzuki's original world, the real world, if a game as intricate, high-tech, and popular as Yggdrasil was shut down and Ainz was one of the last ones even in it? Then what the heck kind of world did he live in? What other games were out that surpassed it? I can only imagine. That is a wonderful question. So I mentioned this a few times in my Overlord breakdown videos, but I've never really gone kind of like a full explanation of it. I've been kind of passing around the idea of making an Overlord Explain video on this topic. So I like the fact that they mentioned Suzuki Satoru, which is Ainz's real name, his Japanese name. So Suzuki Satoru comes from the world of 2138. That was the year when Suzuki Satoru was transported to the New World from Yggdrasil. So like I said, I'm going to save going super in depth for maybe a potential explain video, but what we do know about the world of 2138, just general basic facts, is that it's not really a great place to live. One of the biggest things is that pollution has gone completely crazy by this point in the fictional history. You can't even like go outside without like a gas mask on, and like Suzuki Satoru has seen people like actually dying in the streets because they don't have gas masks on, and like there's like a poisonous smog all around because of pollution. Basically, the governments are completely inefficient now because of how much influence corporations have over them. Basically, corporations in 2138 rule the world now, and we know this because in Ainz Will Go in the Guild, a lot of people would constantly complain about work because they work for these crappy companies, the black companies, which is a Japanese term for like a company with really shady and bad labor practices. But yes, it is very high tech. Yggdrasil works with a neural link gear, kind of like nerve gear from SAO. As for like the other DMMORPGs that are out there other than Yggdrasil, I believe the only one that's ever mentioned in the light novel is this one called Aberrage, I think that's how you pronounce it. And it was a mecha game, which was very popular at the time. But yeah, like I guess it does imply that Yggdrasil has kind of been going out of style because it's, you know, the servers are being shut down. So yeah, to answer the kind of world he lived in, it's kind of a dystopian world, really. There's no nature, there's pollution, smog everywhere. It's not a good world, really. It's not a world I'd want to live in. But yeah, very interesting question talking about, Suzuki Satoru's original world. I do want to do an explained video on the world of 2138 eventually, if I can find some time for that. So next question, how many volumes do you think there will be, and do you think the story will cover all continents? So from what we know from stuff Maruyama has said is that he's planning to end the story of Overlord at volume 18. He was originally planning to end it at volume 17, but he split what would become volumes 15 and 16 into 2 volumes, so that extended it to another volume. As for do I think they will cover all continents, absolutely not. I don't see a way that could logically happen in the time frame that we have left. Unfortunately, from what I've read and seen, Maruyama has kind of lost motivation to continue the series. I am very sad to hear that, but I mean, not like I can force the guy to keep making stuff. I mean, it's his story. I wouldn't have any of this if it wasn't for him, so I'm grateful to have what I have. From the looks of it, this next arc, which I think will be the final arc of Overlord, is going to take place in the Slain Theocracy from the ending events of volumes 15 and 16. So they won't even be going to a new place, I don't think, in these last 2 volumes. And even if they weren't going to the Slain Theocracy, there's just no way with the amount of volumes that they have left that they could cover all the countries and things that we just even know about. It's like the City-State Alliance and the Dragon Kingdom and all that places. So yeah, unfortunately, we got like 2 volumes left, I believe, unless he decides to continue the series or changes his mind. So fingers crossed on that one. Ooh, okay, here we go. Aren't the players summoning after the first caused by the Dragon Emperor trying to bring more world items to the new world? So here's my working theory as to what happened. The Dragon Emperor, who is Platinum Dragonlord's father and is somewhat of a godlike entity in the new world, what I think he did is he had some sort of feeling or maybe some sort of magical intuition about world items from Yggdrasil, and he performed some sort of wild magic ritual to get the world items from Yggdrasil over to the new world when the servers shut down for Yggdrasil, because like Yggdrasil, the world of Yggdrasil was going to be destroyed when the server shuts down. And so he did that, but it was botched. And what actually ended up happening was it was not only the world items that were pulled, but also any and all players that were around world items were also isekai'd to the new world, and they were scattered throughout the timeline of the new world because the ritual was botched. This is not verbatim stated or anything. This is just kind of theory crafting from different sources, and this theory is backed up by several implications in the actual main series, one of which is during Platinum Dragonlord and Pandora's Actress confrontation in volume 14. He implied that the situation with the players is the result of his father and other Dragon Lords, that like basically it's their fault that there are players in the first place. In the bonus volume, another Dragon Lord called Cure Alim also calls Suzuki Satoru and players, he calls them the filth of the Dragon Emperor, which additionally implies that the Dragon Emperor had a large hand in the player's existence in the new world. Fun fact, in a tweet, Maruyama said that the Dragon Emperor, if he had a level, he would be over level 100. So in terms of like base stats and everything, not accounting for like items and stuff, he would be more powerful than a max level player, which is very, very interesting. Unfortunately, we don't know if he's currently still alive in the timeline with Ainz, but the Dragon Emperor is an extremely powerful figure. We just don't really, we haven't seen him like pretty much at all. He's just been mentioned mentioned a few times by other Dragon Lord characters in the Overlord series. So long story short, the Dragon Emperor definitely had something to do with players being in the New World. We just don't know exactly what. Ooh, I like this one. Could someone clear this up for me? People always assume Ainz to be a lich, but we never see a lich in the show or in the parts of the light novel. Are they extinct or in hiding? So good question. However, I do have to correct something. We do actually see a few elder leeches in the anime. I don't think there's any sort of distinction between liches and elder liches. Davernok, who is a member of Six Arms, he calls himself the Undead King and appears for about 20 seconds before Sebas explodes his head. But he is an elder lich, and he's actually the first New World elder lich that we see in the series. And then there's also the Elder Lich that we see in the Lizard Man arc. I think his name is Iguva. He is actually a somewhat weaker Elder Lich, because Elder Liches are around level 30 on average, and Iguva, I believe, was level 22. And Ainz actually does have racial levels in Elder Lich, because that is just the natural racial progression of his race. He was a skeleton mage, then he was an Elder Lich, and then he eventually became an Overlord, going down that path. So an Overlord, which is what Ainz's actual current race is basically the final evolutionary form of the Elder Lich species line. And that's why everyone calls Ainz an Elder Lich, because as I said earlier in that other question, Overlords are, if they don't exist in the New World, they are not common knowledge, but Elder Liches are. So when they see a being like Ainz, they're like, oh, Ainz is an Elder Lich, because they don't know what Overlords are. That's why they constantly mistake him for an Elder Lich. But yeah, there are several actual Elder Liches in the Overlord series, like the ones I've named, and there's tons of Elder Liches that work as servants in Nazarick as well. What's special about the throne? Is it a world item in itself? Yes, the throne that Ainz sits on in Nazarick is a world item. It is called the Throne of Kings. This world item was rewarded to the Ainzwilgon Guild for conquering the dungeon Nazarick in one attempt. As for what it does, I don't believe its full capabilities have been explored yet. We do know that it buffs a person that's sitting in it. When they're sitting in it, a buff can be viewed on their status screen. It also allows the person that's sitting in it to view the status of all of their allies in the Great Tomb. So it allows them to monitor like any sort of debuffs that they have, any sort of status conditions, whether they're alive or dead. It basically it provides a monitoring system to it when they're seated upon it. It also provides some defense to the tomb itself. I believe specifically it was stated that it provided defense against divination magic. But yes, to answer your question, it is a world item in and of itself. So just keep that in mind, I guess, anytime you see the throne. It's a world item. Was it ever mentioned what Ainz's world item in his chest is? So yes, it has been mentioned. We don't have a ton of information on it, but it has been mentioned before. It was mentioned in volume 14 after Pandora Actor's confrontation with Platinum Dragon Lord. We don't know a lot about what it does. Its specific powers haven't been stated. We do know that it has multiple powers, which Ainz mentions when talking about world items in general. He's like, oh, a world item that has multiple functions. Yes, like my red orb here also does that. We also know that one of the powers it possesses is very effective against dragons. In the web novel, Ainz said that it gets more powerful the longer Ainz wields it, I think is what it was said. The web novel isn't canon to the light novel, so I'm pretty sure you can't apply it. Like Albedo doesn't exist in the web novel, so like, you know, pretty much everything that happens in the web novel, I don't know if you can count it as applying to the light novel. I'm pretty sure you can't. So yeah, just basing it off the light novel, we don't really know a lot about what it can do. We've never seen it be used really in the light novel. But yes, the item in Ainz's chest is a world item, and it's just called Ainz's or Momonga's red orb. That's the name, the fan term for it, I think, is what it's just called. How come Ainz didn't want the floor guardians from floor 4 and 8 coming to the 6th floor in the first episode? That's because the guardian of the 4th floor is Gargantua, who is basically a mindless golem. Gargantua doesn't have any sort of mental capacity. it's just basically a robot, because Ainz called them all there to get to know like what's going on with the personalities and like what happens, like are we in real life. So calling Gargantua there wouldn't solve anything. As for the 8th floor, the 8th floor consists of like that is Nazarik's, Ainz calls it the core force of Nazarik. The 8th floor is by far and away the most powerful floor of NPCs that Nazarik has. Actually, as a matter of fact, the single most powerful NPC in Nazarik resides on the 8th floor, and that's Rubetto, which is Albedo's younger sister. Rubetto has never been seen in the light novel or anime. All we know about Rubetto is that she's, like I said, the most powerful NPC in existence in Nazarik, and she's been described as maybe being like an automaton or something. She's like mechanical or something like that. The 8th floor is like the elite fighting force of Nazarik, and they're kind of secretive. Like not a whole lot of the other Guardians don't really know a lot about the 8th floor, and also because he didn't really know like where everyone's loyalties were at that time. He had just been transported to the New World. He didn't know how people were going to react, so he didn't want to get all these 8th floor people all in one place, and potentially they could attack him and he would get killed. So floor 4 didn't come because Gargantua is a mindless golem, and floor 8 didn't come because they're the core force. He wanted them to stay where they are, and also he was afraid of like, if they attack me, I'm fucked. So guys, that wraps up this Q&A. I really love doing this. It's always fun to, you know, shed some more knowledge on the Overlord lore. So guys, as always, leave more questions in the comment section. I want to keep making these. These are fun to make. They're fun to record. I like making them. So feel free, ask any questions, leave any comments on what I've said if it's interesting. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I did the plug early in the video, so we'll spare you. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.